Hi, respected faculty members and my fellow future biomedical engineers. A very good afternoon. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I am grateful to Adi Shankara College for providing me with this virtual platform where I'm able to share my experiences and my challenges that I faced while transitioning from a college campus to a corporate campus, and my experience of how I navigated this fairly new field, which is the regulatory affairs, because during my time in college, there was no much exposure to the theoretical aspect of this arena. Um, yes, I have prepared a very small PPT. If it's okay with you all, I will present my screen.
Definitely, you can. It will definitely enhance whatever you have planned for your speech.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sharing screen. Is it visible to everybody?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you so much for the acknowledgement. Yes, okay. So today I'll be talking about the role of biomedical engineers in regulatory affairs of medical devices. I'll start by formally introducing myself, even though Ramya Miss already did, but just a bit introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Shalom Fatima. I have been working as a senior engineer regulatory affairs in healthcare life sciences business unit of Tata Elxsi. I'm based in Pune, and I have an experience of more than 3.5 years. I am a BTech biomedical engineering graduate from Sahodaya College of Engineering and Technology. Ramya Miss was my HOD back then. And I still remember the first class of control systems that Ramya Miss took. Very honest, brutally honest here. It was a very boring subject, but Ramya Miss somehow made it very interesting, and I passed. Majority of us passed, so yeah, that's a positive sign. Yes, and I'll just go to the rest of the presentation. Okay, I'll just give you an overview of what exactly I'm trying to cover in this session. Basically, an introduction. This is the overview is the table of contents that I'm presenting. I'll move forward. Then I'm working in regulatory affairs. So obviously I will be talking to you about what is regulatory compliance, the role of biomedical engineers in regulatory affairs, the challenges that we as freshers face along with their solution, the skills required for regulatory affairs professional, and the future of biomedical engineers in regulatory affairs. Now, as one biomedical engineer addressing a cohort of future biomedical engineers, I just want to put forth a very simple yet profound thought that our work as a biomedical engineer is directly impacting the patients, right? I mean, guys, if you think about it, we have the capability of saving lives directly or indirectly through our medical devices. Now, that's a very great superpower, and let's never ever take this opportunity for granted. So that being said, I'll move ahead with the rest of the presentation. Now, what is regulatory compliance? So, there are n number of medical devices existing in this world. They're from the smallest syringe to implant to, instruments as big as MRI machines and CT scans. Now, who governs whether these medical devices are safe and effective for the patients or not? Somebody out of the blue can just pop up and create a manufacturing company and create their own medical device and profit from it. But who actually decides if what they are manufacturing or what they're creating is actually beneficial to the community? That is decided by regulatory bodies and people like us, the regulatory affairs professionals. The whole idea of regulatory affairs basically revolves around two concepts. One is the benefit of the medical device, and the other is the risk of the medical device. It's just a play of which is high and which is low while deciding if a medical device is safe or not, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, as I said, there are some established regulatory bodies that we have who determines the safety and effectiveness of each and every medical device. Different countries have different regulatory bodies who governs it. Some important ones are FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Then we have the EU MDR, which is the European Union Medical Device Regulation. My sector or the field that I'm focused on in my job sector is the orthopedic implants. So what is an orthopedic implant? Let's begin from there. If a patient with a complaint of hip pain is going to the doctor and the doctor diagnoses that the patient has a disease called osteoarthritis. Now, how can we mitigate this? What's the solution that the doctor proposes? It's replacement of our natural hip joint with a mechanical one, made of metal and everything. So as you can see here, this is the implant. This gets augmented into the human body. And this particular implant mimics the natural hip joint. So this is basically my area, which is the orthopedic implant department. Now, I have to determine if this implant is good for the patient or not. Like, this is something that is going inside your body. So will it cause any allergic reactions? Will it cause any harm, any other disorders, bleeding, anything? So I have to determine all these are okay, and the benefits outweigh the risks of this particular implant, and this can be marketed into the to the common population for their benefit. Okay, now there are various sectors like this. There is sector for MRI, for X-ray, for stethoscope, even something as small as a syringe or even band-aids. So there are different classes of medical device that we have to categorize. As a manufacturer, we have to categorize each and every device that we manufacture into various risks. And based on these risks, we will determine which regulation will apply. And we have to ensure that our device is following that particular regulatory body. So this is an overview of something that I'm doing right now. I'll get into more details in the further slides. So moving ahead, what is the role of a biomedical engineer in regulatory affairs? It's a vast area. The biomedical engineer plays a role throughout the life cycle of the medical device, from the stage the beginning of creating a particular design to marketing it, and then checking what happens to the patients after marketing and after the patient uses these medical devices. So we play a great role in each and every step. Okay, so I'll tell you the first and foremost part of a medical device manufacturing is a product development and design. It's the time where you think about the design and how the medical device is going to develop, and all of its drawings, its material that's going to be used, everything comes into this particular sector. Now, in that, biomedical engineers have a role to play in 3 sections, which is the risk assessment. Here, we identify the potential risks associated with the medical device, and we try to mitigate them. Then we have the design control. Here, once the R&D team comes up with, research and development team comes up with a particular device design and the material that's going to be used here, we, as a regulatory affairs professional, ensure that it is manufactured and designed according to the rules and regulations that's been laid out by regulatory bodies in that particular country. Then we have testing and validation. Now, conducting rigorous testing to verify the safety, efficacy, and performance of the device is very important. So once you have a prototype, or let's say a model of the device made, or let's say an actual implant made in your hand, before you put it out into the society, you have to ensure that it is safe. And for that, what do? You call in a group of people or a group of volunteers with, if it's a orthopedic implant, a group of people with this disease called osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis, and they implant these medical implants into their hips, and they just analyze those patients for a certain amount of time, ranging from 1 year to even as long as 10 years. So they take this long period of time and they analyze, they test, and they validate the safety and performance of these medical devices. That's, again, the role of a biomedical engineer in regulatory affairs. Now, the second sector is the regulatory submission. So now, after all this, we have a medical implant in our hand, medical device in our hand. So, like I said before, there are bodies that determine if these medical devices manufactured by the company is safe or not, right? So we have to provide certain documents to these bodies through which they will verify and analyze and determine if this medical device can be released into the market or not. So such documentation are done by biomedical engineers, because we understand the product inside and out. The basic thing that we study throughout 4 years of our graduation is about medical devices. So we are the experts there. And that's why it is up to us to see the documentation process of it. Then once we submit these documents to the regulatory body, we have to ensure the compliance of it. For example, if I make a medical implant in India, sitting in India, and I want to market it to the Indian population. So I will have to check what are the things that the Indian regulatory body requires me to follow in order to market this particular device to the society. So that's the compliance part. So if this particular Indian regulatory body requires documents ABC, and if I want to market it in the EU region, European Union region, then there they will require the documents XYZ. So I will have to align my documents respectively and then give it for submission. So that's compliance. Then communication. Guys, communication is a major part of regulatory affairs. It's our skill to convince, I would say, the regulatory body that our medical device is actually fit for the patient and the benefits are way more than the risks. So that's where communication comes in handy. This communication can be in either verbal format or in written format. So we have to interact with this regulatory body and we have to understand where we are short of and what advice they are giving, and we have to implement things accordingly. So this is a huge responsibility if you actually think about it. Like, we are the people responsible to determine if this particular medical device can be used by the population or not. If we make some mistake, for example, there's a stethoscope, and I make some mistake in this submission or during verification, validation, everything, some small mistake. And if I'm just giving it to the regulatory body and they just do not accept it, they say, no, you cannot, market this device here. You will have to look for something else or do something else. And it's like I'm depriving the quality of that medical device to the population because they just cannot use it. We cannot market it. So I'll just tell you one incident that happened. One of, somebody, I'm not going to take names, but somebody forgot to, how you have these labels for your medicines. Same way you have labels for implants as well. Implants and all medical devices. So one of this person forgot to add one symbol. If you notice labels, you'll understand that there are written things and there are symbols and there is a color coding and everything. So all of these are intentional. So one symbol, one small symbol, tiny symbol was forgotten by this team member who was supposed to create this label for that particular medical device. And nobody noticed. The reviewers did not notice. Nobody noticed. So it was a very, very small issue, but caused a big problem because the regulatory body said you cannot sell this anywhere. And even if you have sold this anywhere, you have to recall the device. So that was a loss of billions of dollars. And it was a loss because the product was actually good, but you just... So if you think about it, it's a huge responsibility, right? So you always have to understand the power that you hold in your hands and always work accordingly. And the third sector, okay, now you have submitted your documents to the regulatory body, and now you're waiting for their assessment. And they said, okay, this is fine, this is good, you can market it in the shops and everything. So now we have to determine where my medical device would benefit most. So market analysis. It's market analysis, not just in medical devices, but it's like whatever you're planning to sell, you have to do an analysis of the market. Like if I create a gaming set and I sell it to a place where there are no much gamers, what's the point, right? So I do a market analysis, see which all areas of this place have more gamers, and then I provide the set to them. So it's like that. So similarly, we do a market analysis here as well. And then after that, strategy development. So now you have decided which market you have to place your medical devices. Now you have to decide a strategy to facilitate the timely market entry and, product approval and everything. So that's what I'm saying. Like, biomedical engineer's role in regulatory affairs is so vast that each and every sector has a different set of regulatory affairs professional to take care of that particular section. So moving ahead with regulatory intelligence. Once you create a medical device and you market it and you introduce it into market, people are buying, our job does not stop there. No, we have to continuously monitor and see where there is, scope of improvement, because this is an evolving area. Healthcare is evolving. It's never going to go out of scope. It's never going to go out of trend, because healthcare is the most important thing to any human being. So since it's just evolving throughout, our intelligence to keep improving the product is also very much crucial. So that's what a regulatory strategy team would do. Then everything is done. You have released your product into the market. Then we have this set of people who goes through the post-market, post-market section, whatever happens after the device is introduced into the market. So this involves adverse event reporting. If I place a not stethoscope, let's say orthopedic implant into the market, and there are 100 patients who's got, an implant, hip replacement surgery using my implant, I have to ensure that my device is not causing any harm to the patient. So I have to constantly keep monitoring if anybody, any doctor, any patient, any bystander of the patient, any relative, anybody, any salesman, application engineer, anybody has reported any adverse event or any complication or any side effect for that device. I have to keep monitoring this because we're talking about the safety of human beings. So it's very important. So there is a section of people who, track the number of adverse events that's reported by the population. Then there's vigilance. So you have monitored there is a group of people to monitor the complications. Now, what about the performance of the device? Who is to say that the device after 10 years has just lost its interest, it's not performing well? So what about those? So again, there is a group of people who goes to the vigilance search as well to ensure that the device is performing amazingly as it's intended to be performed. Then there is corrective action. So if anybody, side effects are quite normal in healthcare. We just have to make sure that the benefits are always higher than the risk, right? So if I sold about 200 medical devices and out of that, 5 of them reported some complaint, I cannot leave them. I cannot be like, you do what you want. I've done my thing. I've sold it to you. Now it's up to you and your doctor. No, that's not how we take up responsibility. We have to suggest corrective actions, why this particular adverse event was reported and what can be done to solve this issue and ensure that it does not repeat in any other patient. So that's what corrective action team would take care of. Then finally, there's quality assurance. Quality assurance is there in everything. We have quality assurance. So quality assurance people have 3 main jobs, which is quality system. They develop and implement the quality system to ensure the compliance with the regulations. The second is the audit. I'm sure you're very much familiar with the word audit. It happens in colleges as well to ensure that everything is perfectly going well according to plan and it is compliant with certain regulations. So that's an audit. It can be internal and external. Internal audits will make sure that internally we're performing well. External audits will make sure that we internally are not creating any messes. So that's what an external audit would aim to achieve. Then continuous improvement. Like I said, it is an ever-evolving field. So continuous improvement initiatives are very much important to enhance the product safety and its regulatory compliance. So these are the roles of biomedical engineers in regulatory affairs. I hope everything is clear to you. During my time, I did not have anybody to tell me that these are the jobs in regulatory affairs and choose your pick, whatever you'd like to go with. I did not have that. But now that I've come and I have a 360-degree view of what's actually happening in this arena, I have come to know that the opportunities are vast globally, not just in India. So you can choose your pick, you can find your niche, and you can go ahead with that streamlined aim forward. That being said, I'm moving ahead with the challenges freshers may face. I think this is one of the most helpful topic as future biomedical engineers. When I graduated from my college, it was in 2020, and it was during COVID time. COVID was at its peak. It was very difficult for me because it was just me in my room, which was my office as well as my area of entertainment. So it was very hard for me because I had no idea what a corporate would look like, what an industry would look like, what a manufacturer would look like, and what is expected of me to, as a regulatory affairs professional, what is my responsibility? I had no idea. So it was a trial and error of everything. I had many good mentors who told me, this is what you can expect, this is what you could do. But at the end of the day, I had to find my own way. I think that's the same case with everybody in this, who's a part of this rat race, this competitive world. You just have to find your own way. So the main challenge is, while looking at the regulatory aspect, it's navigating complex regulations and staying updated. Like I said, this is an ever-evolving field. So this year, one regulatory body might say 10 rules are taken from here and we are adding 10 new rules. So now your medical device has to follow these rules. So we have to constantly be updated, okay, what's happening, what's not, because one small miss and there's a huge loss to both financially and socially, mentally, everything is a huge loss. So have to always constantly be aware of what's happening. Then the limited industry experience and practical knowledge. During college days, I don't think any of us have taken it seriously, at least till 3rd year at least. We used to be all casual, all chill, saying, let's see what happens. We're just, not going to take anything seriously. That's just the age, I think. And my parents and my professors at that time used to tell me, see, this is not the right way. It was constant lecture in each and every class saying, students, you have to take things seriously. At that time, we used to barely listen to teachers. I'm not kidding. But now that I'm in this position, 3 years fast forward, I understand what they were trying to say and what they were trying to, communicate exactly. Now I'm able to understand. So I'll, suggest you some solutions that you could take as first years and second years and third and fourth years. But let's talk about the next challenge, which is networking and building relationships. At this age, we have phones, we have 5G internet, we have Instagram, Snapchat, everything at our fingertips. So why don't we use them to increase our networking? And by networking, I just don't mean posting photos or anything. I mean connecting with professional people that can benefit our career. It's a very competitive world. So even if I achieve 95% in my BTech, there's no guarantee that I'm going to get a job. So what will benefit me that I could have an opportunity, I could get an interview or anything in general? It's networking. It's building a strong relationship with your peers, people in your area of interest. So that's very important, networking and building relationship. Then adapting company culture. I'll explain this in more detail. But then the next one is the imposter syndrome, where we just feel like we're not good enough, or even though you have all the knowledge in the world, you're just thinking that you're just not, I cannot do this anymore. I'm not fit enough. So that's what imposter syndrome was. And this is one of the main things that I had to deal with as, the COVID batch. It was the first batch of COVID. We had no idea what to do, what to sit home, how to, look at jobs, what's going on. It was a complete lockdown. So the mental pressure gets to you and you just feel a lot of self-doubt in yourself. But I think not just the COVID batch, I think this is a common scenario that's currently affecting the young population, young and older population equally. So let's see what we can do about this. So we discussed about the challenges. Now what's the solution to it? The first point that I said is navigating complex regulations and staying updated. You all are going to hate this, but the only solution to this is continuous learning. I was not a passionate learner, or I was never a passionate reader. To be honest, I barely read books. And at that time, I hope my parents are not listening to this, but in my 10th standard, my parents and my teachers used to say, see, 10th is the turning point of your life. I'm sure you must have heard it as well a lot of times. And then I moved to 12th standard. And same way teachers and my parents said that, okay, 12th is the turning point of your life, because you're going to choose which professional degree you're going to take. Fast forward, got a good college, and my professors and my parents told me again, turning point of your life, because you need a job, you need to secure a good job. And then I got a good job and I reached there, and we had this training for campus recruitees and, to train them into corporate. And even then in that meeting, I still remember very clearly, the presenter said, see, children, I know you have secured a good job, but you're not there yet. So this is the turning point of your life. But guys, very honestly, let me tell you, each and every day is a turning point of your life. Because each and every decision that you choose, each and every choice that you make is going to turn you, and it's going to push you to that path, which, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, or in your old age, in 90 or 95, you look back and say, okay, I have accomplished something. Each and every small decision that you make is a turning point. Always keep this in mind. I know you might think that she's just talking something, let her talk and go. I used to think the same thing when people used to come to my class and tell me that, okay, this is how you should do, this is what you should do. We used to not pay any interest, because we used to think it's quite cool. So it's not. Fast forward, you come to a professional setting, it's not. You realize every day is a turning point, and every day you learn something. Always, the competition is huge. There's a lot of graduates graduating from various good, beautiful, grand colleges. But always remember, the competition is not always with them, it's with yourself. You have to look back. If I look at myself today, I should be able to look back and I should be able to say, okay, I am an improved version of myself compared to yesterday. That's the real competition, I feel. So learning is a huge part of it. There are 100 people who huge multinational companies recruit every month or every year, thousands of people. What sets you apart is how you embrace continuous learning, I would say. What makes you different from them is your attitude and your willingness to learn. In any interview, this will be helpful for the 4th years, any interview that you take, and they ask you some question that you don't know, because let's face it, we know the theoretical knowledge, but practical knowledge, we're still getting there, right? So any interview, somebody asks you, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? If you say that, sir, I don't know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to learn that concept, and I will reply to you within this amount of time, you're guaranteed a spot. Because people are not going to look for how much knowledge that a fresher has, because they all know as a fresher, we're starting from zero. They look for your ability and your attitude towards a positive learning experience. So always remember that when you're answering questions in your interview. Then the next challenge that we have is limited industry experience and practical knowledge. Even though we have a lot of labs and everything, practical knowledge required enough for a professional setting, I think it's just, we're still getting there, like I said. So what can you do to solve this? Or, take a step ahead compared to the others. Grab as many industrial opportunities as possible, be it internships, be it paper presentations, be it just industrial visit, whatever it is, make sure you take it seriously with your whole heart and you gain as many experience from it as possible. My sister, she's also a BTech. She's doing a BTech in Bangalore. So one thing that I always advised her from the very beginning is that whatever internship opportunities that you find, be it on LinkedIn, Naukri, or your college, just grab it. Do not think of anything, just take it. And then those certificates and subconsciously your attitude towards the professional life from those industrial experiences will mold you a lot. So that's very important. And I'm sure Adi Shankara is a great college who's, every time I sit on WhatsApp and I go through Ramya Mr. status, I see that every other day something great happens there. Somebody gives a speech or there is some industrial visit or some kind of, collaboration with industries happen. So use these opportunities positively because that's what's going to, make you stand ahead compared to the others. Then networking and building relationships. Strong communication skills, as we all know, are required for building relationships and networking. After I passed out, the next batch, which was the 2021 batch, it was kind of a rough patch for them because COVID was doing its thing and there were no much job opportunities and many people kind of struggled a bit. But many people also benefited from the relationship they had with the seniors or with people in their professional category because people ask for referrals and I myself have asked for referrals. And it's just, in LinkedIn, if you apply to a particular job, the HR might have posted that job 24 hours before, but there might be 3,000 and 2,000 applicants already applying to that job. You can see it very clearly on LinkedIn. But I don't think any HR would be going through those 3,000 applications and scrutinizing them one by one. No, many of our resumes that we submit will be piled up and they just won't look at it. But how do you make them look at it? If you have somebody in that company that can give a recommendation or that can say, I have this resume in my hand, why don't you go through it? Then it grabs their attention, right? So they will look at your resume. So build a network such a way that it benefits your career. Also, all other networks are also helpful, but I'm just talking from the career perspective, from the career point of view. Then adapting company culture. This is very important. Everything's important, but this is very common because in college, even when I was in college, teachers used to come, professors used to come to my class and say, wear your ID card, tuck in your shirt, what is the spike on your hair, what is this colored hair, polish your shoes. And they used to keep saying this, and because we thought it was so cool during that time, we unbuttoned shirt till here and untucked shirt and hair so loose and everything. We used to think it's pretty cool. But guys, professionally, it's very uncool. We get see, in a professional setting, you are representing a company, and to move your decisions ahead or your opinions, to give your opinions or anything, you need people to respect you, and respect cannot be demanded. So it all lies in how you present yourself, the way you dress, your body language, your communication skills, your positive attitude, your outlook on life, everything. All of this determines the respect that you will get. And also, of course, your work as well, how honestly you do your work. But all of these are very important. And we are not Thanos with infinity stones who can just snap your finger at one point of time and say, okay, I'm just professional, I'm very professional. It does not work that way. Trust me, I know. Even now, we sometimes get emails from HR asking us not to litter the corporate campus or to wear proper professional clothes or wear the ID cards. And me and my friends, my colleagues used to think, what is this, man? I mean, this is not college, right? But that's the whole point. People have been so careless and carefree in college that it becomes very hard for us to move into a professional setting and be extremely professional, because subconsciously we'll be sitting all casual when the manager's walking or the director's walking or clients are walking, and we'll be all casual, chilling, talking, everything. So it just comes. So it's always good if you start early. You start training yourself early, and even every time teacher says, wear your ID card, you do not say, what miss, no miss, go miss. Do not say that. Just wear your ID card, because it's very helpful when you come to the professional setting. Okay. Then dealing with imposter syndrome, like I said, self-doubt. It's very common in the generation today. Just one quote I would like to say. Remember, you are the author of your life. My mother keeps sending me a lot of motivational quotes on WhatsApp. Even though I ignore it, I'm like, what is this kiddish conversation? But secretly it affects me, and it helps me through all the challenges that I've overcome. I live in Pune alone, and there are a lot of corporate struggles that I deal with. Not just me, everybody has their own share of problems. So a positive outlook on everything will help you, and that anything that I do today is because I chose to do it. Nobody else chooses it for me, but I did it. So you have the power to just rewrite that narrative and replace your self-doubt with self-belief, and transform the imposter syndrome and use it as a catalyst to improve, towards your achievement. So everything is in your hands, and you are capable of everything. There's nothing that cannot be done. Just believe in yourself. When you're feeling low, talk to your friends, talk to your teachers, talk to your family. They're the biggest support system of all. And everything will be fine. Just be kind to others, understand others' perspective rather than being very impulsive. And somebody comes and shouts at you because they might be feeling very low. They might be thinking that I'm not good enough for this. So they take your anger out on you. Just be kind, understand where that person is coming from, and help each other. Even though it is a competitive world, like I said, the competition is not with others, it's with yourself. So just be kind to others, help others, and let's all grow together. So that's one way to deal with the imposter syndrome. Then we have skills. What are the skill sets that you will list in your resume for applying to a regulatory affairs profession? Not just to list in your resume, but also to embody the skills when you go to a professional setting. One, like I said, is communication. Communication is always important, no matter what the profession. It will give you a value. If you are coming and you are talking to a group of people and you are hesitating a lot to talk, or you are just, your body language is not too open and it's just too scared and shy, people will just write, okay, this person is like this. It's the ugly truth, I would say, but people judge. And yeah, we say, well, let's not, judge people, and I don't care what anybody says about me, I'm this and that. But when it comes to a professional setting, communication is very important because it gives you respect and it gives you value. So I would say, while talking to friends, your classmates, your teachers, I would say just I'm not always telling you to be very professional and talking, saying hi, good morning, have you had coffee, or how was your day going? I'm not saying that. You can be very chill and casual with your friends, but do keep it in mind, or do take some exercises or take some time out from your college time to improve your communication. Read more, listen more, watch movies. That I'm sure everybody has access to Instagram. So there are many accounts, handles on Instagram that teach you how to be confident, how to communicate better. Use those resources, talk to your teachers, and I'm sure it's quite easy to get there. Yeah. Then the second is collaboration. As a regulatory affairs professional, you just do not work with yourself. You work with a huge team. It can even range from the R&D team, research and development team, to even completely off the line team, which is the legal team. You will have to collaborate with all of them. So again, building relationships and increasing your communication skills, all this will help in collaboration as well. And just keep an open mind to everything, because when you come to the industrial side of the world, it's just not you, right? Or it's just not your friends or the similar age category. You have to deal with, sometimes even manage or lead senior people, like people who are 40 and 50 and all those age categories. And sometimes you might not see eye to eye. You might have different ideologies. So just keep an open mind, I would say, and understand where they come from, because they are not much acceptable to change. So yeah, just keep an open mind in general, and collaboration will do its own thing. Then problem solving. Again, no matter what profession you choose, problem solving is important. You can do exercises to improve your critical thinking. You can read, there are even games to improve your problem solving skills. So use your free time to do all that. Then attention to detail. Like I said, the story about missing a small symbol from a label, attention to detail is very important. It will cost you a lot. So when you're coming to any profession, but majorly regulatory affairs, attention to detail is very important. Even a small comma, if you miss a small comma, it can change the meaning of a sentence, and that can lead to, further questions. And let's stay away from all those hazards and just be very focused in what you do with great passion, and attention to detail will come by itself. Then resilience. It's not easy out here, is it? So keep a positive outlook on everything. Be resilient. Nothing can, knock you down. You know who you are, and that's enough. So just be resilient when you come to the professional industrial side of the world. Then let's talk about the future of biomedical engineers. The evolving landscape is crazy. Like, we never thought there would be artificial intelligence in 2024 or 2023, but there is. So you never know what is going to happen or what's coming. So along with the technological advancements, our opportunities also increase. Many people think that because artificial intelligence is here, many people are going to lose their jobs. No, nobody's going to lose their jobs. It's just going to make our jobs easier. That's all. And if one job dies down because of this technological advancement, another job pops up. So there's a balance always created. And with this, there is a diverse career path. There is global opportunities, not just in India, but in Europe, in America, and everything. There's a lot of opportunities for us now. And making a difference, as I said earlier, we biomedical engineers have a direct impact on the patient safety. So let's use our power for the good and make sure good healthcare systems and quality healthcare is provided and is accessible to all the people. Then, yes, I would like to conclude saying that you guys, we should know the power that we hold. Be kind to everybody. Be transparent, be honest in your work, be passionate, and do everything with 100%. My uncle always tells me that whatever you do, make sure you're the best at it. And sometimes it's not possible to achieve 100%, be the 100% best at everything, but do whatever you can and which is your best, and everything will fall in place by itself. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Shalom. I should admit this is one of the best motivational industrial experience sharing session which I have heard in the recent past. And this is one of the best session I think our students can get. That too from just a person who is just some 3 or 4 years older than them. Pooja, she is our final year student, and I think she would like to give a formal word of thanks to you. Pooja, over there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please carry on.
Thank you, ma'am. It was an insightful and engaging section. So I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Shalom Fatima for sharing your invaluable knowledge and expertise with us. Your insights about regulatory affairs have provided us with a deeper understanding of its significance in the industry. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank to our HOD Ramya ma'am and coordinator Surya ma'am for organizing and coordinating this informative section. Thank you so much.
Surya ma'am, Shalom, you might not be knowing Dr. Surya is a pass out from Sagarika Engineering College, and she is currently working with us. And we have a few more faculty members who studied or who have already worked there in Sahridaya.
Oh, nice. So there's a Sahridaya cohort here. Nice to meet everybody.
And Surya, you would like to say a few words?
It's a very wonderful session, and the students have learned a lot more, and experience sharing has been wonderful. It has been a very good pleasure for me. Thank you.
So, on behalf of the department and personally, I'm expressing my great happiness in receiving a session from you, and it really was a wonderful session. And when you're speaking from the industry perspective, from your own experience, it will definitely be relatable for the students, especially regarding the wearing of ID cards or keeping their shirts and pants neat and wearing them. The importance of that in a professional aspect, they would have definitely understood. Thank you, Shalom Fatima, once again. And definitely we require a session, a physical session of you when you are in Kerala next time. Please be in contact with us. We are inviting you to the campus and address the students directly.
Thank you so much, Miss. Truly, it was an honor for me. I don't know if you guys noticed, but throughout the session, I was shivering because this is my first time too. But there's just 2 reasons why I went forward with this. One is because Ramya Miss suggested that this is an opportunity. So I took it. And the second is it was an opportunity. So this was one of my way of improving myself in public speaking, I would say. So guys, always encourage to take up challenges, and it's always going to be beneficial for you all. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you are really a role model for the young generation. Okay, keep going higher and higher. All the best wishes, Shalom.
Thank you so much.